So again, so how old is the Shroud of Turin? Dr. Google again telling us it's 728 years old. I think we have a number of evidences pointing to the opposite. So a lot of times people ask, so will they ever sample it again, do another carbon-14 data? We'll get into that as we get into the carbon-14 data. And also what I want to point out is this is how misinformation is done. So here's the contrary evidence. The Shroud may date from the time of Jesus. I looked at this. It's this weird theory about radiation in a cave and all that. They don't say any of this scientific evidence. All this evidence is out there, and this is what they give you as the contrary evidence, is this, you know, like totally off the wall response. So why does the Shroud of Turin date the 1988 carbon-14 data? The simple reason is because when they looked at the sample that they took in 1988, it had cotton in it. And we just said it's a linen cloth that has no cotton in it. And here's what happened. There's a backstory to it. So in the STIRP program in 1978, they wanted to sample the Shroud in 6 different areas. You know, it made sense. And they are the ones that convinced Pope John Paul II to let's go ahead and do carbon-14. We're confident this is the real thing. Carbon-14 will vindicate it, will prove to the world that Shroud of Turin it dates back to the time of Jesus. So they, the Italian scientists got a little upset because they weren't involved in the 1978 study, and the Americans had set this protocol to have the 6 sites sampled, and they said, you know what, we're going to do it our way. And instead, they picked a single area, not 6 different areas, and they picked it on the edge of the Shroud where it had clearly been damaged. You know, remember, it's been in 3 fires, it's been through all this, and they picked an area that had been handled, and so that's where they sent. Well, what happened is, it was actually a nurse. They noticed, 2005, she was, because all these people were like, they couldn't believe it. I mean, it was so overwhelming, the evidence. How could it date to 1532? A couple reasons, actually, though, too. If you understand carbon-14 data, basically what it is, carbon-14 is a radioactive isotope of carbon, and it decays at a certain rate. And so, but every time the Shroud is exposed to the atmosphere at that time, it's going to absorb that carbon-14 from that era. So we already know it was exposed to air in 1532, a lot of air in 1532, and soot and all that. And so that's part of the answer there. But the reality is that there's carbon in. So what happened is when they were looking at this nurse was looking at its photographic image of she noticed there was a slight variation in this 1st century herringbone weave where the sample was taken. So she went back to the scientists that did the 1978 and said, pull up your sample, because they took some samples too. And they pulled it up, and they said, yeah, you're right, that's different from what we have. And so then they did chemical testing and then microscopy and found that there were cotton fibers in the 1988 sample, and in the 1978 sample there were no cotton fibers. And there were also dyes and mortises, glues in there, which were not present in the image part. And so what they realized is the Port Clare religious sisters had repaired the Shroud in 1532, because obviously it was a pretty bad fire. And in fact, they have records that they did repair it. And so that's what happened. And so they sampled from the very area that they repaired it. So of course it dates to 1532. And again, it's been proven now by, again, Los Alamos lab, several scientists verified. But again, you don't hear this. You don't hear this data coming through.